budget deal and a broken process. It just keeps on coming. We'll talk about it right after this.
Hi, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Here's your host, Representative Rick Crawford.
And we're back. Thanks for joining us again for another installment of Tune In. I'm your host, Rick Crawford. And last week, as you recall, I talked in some detail about the process here in Washington and why I believe it's broken and what needs to be done to fix it. Well, I told you also that I would keep you posted as things developed. And what has transpired this week is an example of why we need a new process. I'm going to give you some details on it. This is a perfect example of why we need a new process here in Washington. You may have heard in the news that a budget deal has been reached between the Democrats and the Republicans and the White House. And don't really know a heck of a lot of the details, but what I do know about it, it's not a good deal. It was negotiated in secret, rushed to the floor in hopes that we could get around our statutory spending limit. That's what's commonly referred to as our debt ceiling. In order to give you a little bit of a better background, a little bit more context, let me refresh your memory. The Budget Control Act, that was passed some years ago. Actually, I think was one of the first things that we did in my first term in Congress was pass the Budget Control Act. And it's ever since then, people have been trying to break the mandatory spending caps that were prescribed by the Budget Control Act. But the BCA, as it's often referred to, has done more to control spending in Washington since any time I've been here in Congress. And that's important since, as you know, we are well in excess of $18 trillion in debt. And so bills like this budget deal took place, and I mentioned this last week as a reminder. I mentioned this, that when this stuff takes place outside of the purview of a committee, that really is not following regular order. And so in a sense, it was basically formed, put together, hammered out by an oligarchy of congressional leaders and administrative bureaucrats. That's a handful of members and a whole bunch of staff that are doing what they ask them to do. But this is a deliberate attempt to get around these spending caps that are prescribed in the Budget Control Act. They don't take into consideration the views of other representatives or the committees they serve on. And through that line of reasoning, they really show great disrespect for the people, you, who sent us here to do your business. And so, we're here to reflect your priorities. And when this kind of thing happens and we don't get to weigh in on it, again, this is, in my opinion, a violation of the process, and it's a violation of what you've sent us here to do and our responsibility. Couple of points here. Budget agreement completely disregards congressional jurisdiction and process. Number one, this agreement raises budget-busting spending levels without any consent from a majority of House members. Number two, this deal also raids policies like crop insurance that were previously negotiated by a committee and passed into law. That's the Farm Bill. Why this matters to us in Arkansas. Arkansas is our number one industry in the state, and it's also particularly important in the 1st District of Arkansas. But crop insurance specifically, we don't really have much left to offer in support of farmers except for crop insurance, and this basically guts it. And so I don't know what agriculture is going to look like if this budget deal passes, so we're doing everything we can to push back against this. I mean, those of us on the Ag Committee really recognize this. But unless something very serious changes about this, and I can't imagine that it would change to my satisfaction, but I certainly can't support this budget agreement. And, no one except a handful of congressional leaders and some White House officials agreed to this. I certainly don't agree to it. And I don't think most people in my district would agree to it. And so, as I said before, this is an ongoing issue, and it's all sort of being steamrolled because we've got the backdrop of a speaker election, and we've got the debt ceiling, we've got all these things that are taking place, and all this is just emblematic of that broken process that I described in the last installment of Tune In. So again, I'm gonna keep you posted on this stuff. I'm not happy with the way this budget deal has developed. I won't support it, and I will encourage my colleagues not to support it. And we will keep you posted as things develop. Want to make sure that you that know how to reach us. If you want to weigh in, send us your name and your hometown at Tune-In AR1. Let us know what you're thinking. We'll get your questions, on the show, and you can weigh in at Tune-In AR1. Again, we'll keep you posted as things develop. Until then, we'll see you next time on Tune In. Thanks for joining us.